Good morning. We're back with more Lord of the Rings LCG, and today is Journey to the Crossroads on Nightmare difficulty. One of the most difficult quests in the game, in my opinion, on Nightmare difficulty. Not on progression mode, it's still very difficult on progression mode, but in Nightmare it's at another level. And this would be either first or second in terms of hardest Nightmare quests in the game, in my opinion. The only other contender is Escape from Dol Guldur, but with Escape from Dol Guldur, the difficulty is mostly in the beginning and getting a good setup. And in Journey to the Crossroads, things can go wrong at any time in the quest, and it's very frustrating to spend a lot of time getting a good setup, playing everything well, only to fail at the end due to the wrong shadow card. Now this can be mitigated by playing a deck that deals with shadow cards better than this one. However, if you play a deck which deals with shadow cards better than this one, typically that deck will have a slower start than this one. This deck excels at getting a very rapid start. And in this quest, you need both a very rapid start and a way to deal with shadow cards. So if you choose to deal with the shadow cards well, for example with one of the other decks that I played frequently with Elrond and a Test of Will and so forth in a Bond of Friendship deck or Bond of Fellowship deck, yes, you will deal with the shadow cards better, but you will also have a slower start on average. And that is a problem because at the beginning of the quest phase, we bring one card off of the Crossroads deck, and it is always an enemy, and the enemies are mostly very formidable. There are 10 enemies. 3 of them are Oliphants with their 6 attack, 3 threat, and they cannot take more than 3 damage each round, and that is tough to deal with early. Now, if you just leave the card in the staging area, then what's going to happen is it will go face down into the black gate at the end of the next planning phase. And if it goes face down, if you get too many cards going face down under the black gate at the end of the planning phase, you lose the game. On single player, you can't have more than 3 under there. And there are 3 Oliphants in the Crossroads deck. Now, in normal mode, you have the option of simply putting all the Oliphants underneath the black gate. If you do that on solo play, if you get 3 cards underneath on solo play, well, there are a variety of encounter card or shadow effects that are trying to return enemies to the staging area, and if one of those goes off, then you'll get a card under the black gate that you didn't want. So, if you get a card like Oliphant early, you pretty much have no option other than to put it under the black gate. I could engage it. When you engage an Oliphant, it exhausts all allies in play. And I don't have a hero in this deck capable of taking an attack from an Oliphant on turn 1. Not many decks do. If you run Baragon, you could take 1 attack from an Oliphant. If you don't have a Gondorian shield, he would take 2 damage if there's no shadow card buff. But the second attack would kill him, and an Oliphant can only take 3 damage per round, so that's a tough challenge for any deck to handle. Which means, depending on which cards come off of the Crossroads deck first, you may be forced to put cards under the black gate early. And in this case, I got a card, Haradrim Soldier, who got a shadow card that returned him to the staging area. And as I don't have a way to kill him from there, he's going to be there at the end of the planning phase, and that's going to be the second card under the black gate. And there are a lot of shadow cards in this encounter deck that are trying to return enemies to the staging area. Even if I was playing a deck that could handle shadow card effects, I might not be set up to do it on turn 2. So there's a lot of luck involved in this quest. It's a very, very difficult quest. It's my vote for at least second hardest Nightmare quest in the game. Though I could make a case for it being the hardest, even harder than Escape from Dol Guldur. because most of the difficulty of Escape from Dol Guldur is in the initial setup. And so you can just kind of reset the game up over and over and over until you get a decent setup, and then you've got a fairly decent chance to win, whereas this quest, you won't really know that you're failing until late in the quest, and it's just what combination of shadow cards are you going to get, and what order are enemies going to come off the encounter deck, and what encounter cards are you going to get that are they going to succeed in putting more enemies under the Black Gate, which is something that they're going to try to do. There are also some shadow cards where if an enemy destroys a character, they go under the Black Gate, which means that you really need strong defenders among your allies or among your heroes, and you need them rapidly. This Haradrim soldier makes an immediate attack when he engages, and then he attacks again. So that requires multiple strong defenders because he does attack for 4. So if you use up your primary defender and then your secondary defender is a chump blocker and dies and you have the wrong shadow card, then under the Black Gate he goes. So those are the reasons why this is a very, very challenging quest, and therefore success on this quest is a matter of choosing, do I want to play a deck that gets off to a rapid start, or do I want to play a deck that's a little slower but handles shadow effects better after it gets set up? And then you just need luck. You need to keep trying until you get the right combination of cards off the Crossroads deck, the right combination of shadow cards, the right combination of encounter cards. That will enable you to beat the quest, and that's what happened in this playthrough. And I would never pretend that it was anything other than luck, for the most part. Now here, I think I made a mistake. I could have engaged this Oliphant, and I think this would have gone better. I do have a full setup with Warriors of... Well, not would have gone better, because I did ultimately win, but the Oliphant here, I think it would have given me more wiggle room if I engaged him. And I have a full setup with 4 Warriors of Lossarnach, and so a reasonable chance of surviving the Oliphant's attacks. I chose not to engage him and to send him under the Black Gate. I think in hindsight, having had a look at all the cards in the encounter deck, that was a little risky. Well, a lot risky. Because it made like every shadow card that I dealt to myself for the rest of the game, like, I was sweating them all. However, if I had engaged the Oliphant here and he had his 3 attacks, there's a chance he still would have gotten the shadow card that sent him back to the staging area, and under the Black Gate he would have gone anyway. However, I think that would have been the better play, given my board setup at this time. I think that sending him under the Black Gate was probably not the correct play, even though it worked out. I think it's important to note that it was risky, because after I completed this quest, I went back and looked at all the cards in the encounter deck, which I hadn't done before playing the quest, and I noted how many of them are trying to send cards underneath the encounter deck, and I realized how lucky I got that I didn't get any of them at the wrong spot. And given that, I think that engaging the Oliphant there, I think you can really, for practical purposes, you can only really have 2 cards underneath the Black Gate in solo play, because you need the others, maybe even 1. I mean, I already had the encounter deck send 1 back to the staging area that I then had to put under the Black Gate. So now, if you're running Gandalf, if you get a card sent back to the staging area, you still have the option of playing Gandalf during the planning phase and killing that card before it can go under the Black Gate. So perhaps this isn't the best deck to play against this quest, even though it did work. Just because it worked doesn't mean that's the best thing to do. And the best thing to do may have been to play the Monosphere Outlands deck that I've played in the past that runs Sneak Attack Gandalf, which would be helpful for perhaps killing off one of these enemies. If I had Sneak Attack Gandalf, I could Sneak Attack Gandalf during the resource phase. He would return to my hand for the planning phase, and then I could kill, so I could take out an 8 health enemy or less in the staging area. So the Southern Warrior or any of the archers could die to that, and then they wouldn't get sent underneath the Black Gate. And that deck can still get off to a reasonably fast start, though it is a little slower. It's really hard to say. Striking the proper balance between speed of setup and ability to deal with shadow cards is the key to this quest. And by deal with shadow cards, I mean either cancel them or deal with the consequences of them. Primarily the consequence of an enemy being sent back to the staging area, and therefore you have the risk of it going underneath the Black Gate in the next planning phase if you can't take it out before then. And the more I think about it, the more I think it was incorrect to send the Oliphant under the staging, under the Black Gate in this instance. Though there's no way of knowing what would have happened. Perhaps there's still another Oliphant in the Crossroads deck, so need to have enough characters to take attacks without dying from the Oliphant. And maybe if I'd engaged that one that I sent under the Black Gate, maybe I wouldn't have had enough characters. Maybe one of them would have died. And if your allies are dying to Oliphant attacks, it greatly increases the likelihood that they'll be sent under the Black Gate, because there are multiple shadow cards that say if the character is destroyed by this attack, then off he goes. And there simply aren't enough characters to take, 6 attacks for 6, a minimum of 6, without dying. Even with a full setup of 4 Warriors of Lossarnach, that's a tough challenge for any deck to handle. A setup of Baragon with Gondorian Shield and Unexpected Courage would be ideal for that challenge. However, that's not so easy to set up early in the game. And in this case, I got an Oliphant on turn 1 and an Oliphant on, what was it, I think it was Crossroads card number 3 or 4, maybe 5, something like that. So relatively early. And so the challenge of getting Baragon set up with Gondorian Shield and Unexpected Courage is not so easy. But once you do, and you have enough willpower to handle this threat in the staging area, because I do have 2 locations with limited ability to clear them. The Shadowy Thicket is another terrible encounter card that will try to ruin your playthrough, because it gets +2 threat for each card underneath the Crossroads. So if it comes on turn 1, for example, you just lose because it's +18 threat. So you have a 20 threat card which could come out on turn 2. You could get a setup where turn 1 you get an Oliphant off the Crossroads deck and a Shadowy Thicket for 20 threat off the encounter deck, and I don't know that there's a deck in the game that can deal with that. So you need some luck in this one for sure. And luckily we have Forlong here. He's pretty important in this part of the quest when the Oliphant engages and exhausts all the allies. You can still ready up Forlong at the beginning of the combat phase and have him take one of the attacks. And the Man of Harad can attack Hirluin. Could attack Denethor too. But I didn't want to risk getting one of those shadow cards that deals +1 damage and puts the attacking enemy underneath the Black Gate if the character is destroyed. So with Frodo's ability, I've got enough damage to take out the Man of Harad. So we weathered the Oliphant, and we got 3 cards left on the encounter deck. Or not on the encounter deck, underneath the Crossroads deck. And I'll be sweating every shadow card, because I know there's one more of those just flat out return enemy to the staging area shadow cards in the deck. So, gonna quest for... I'm not really too concerned about it. I can really get the 10 progress that I need to finish up 1B anytime I need to. So just thinking about not taking too much threat, and it's going to be arrows thick in the air, so 2 archery for each enemy. And gonna make enough progress to clear the location, get a few progress on the quest. And I think about moving to Shadowy Thicket, but I decide against it. Once all the cards are out from underneath the Crossroads, from the Crossroads deck, we can go ahead and move to the Crossroads and then clear it and win the game. So here I'm just placing the archery damage from arrows thick in the air, along with the Southern Archer's engage ability. It's just 1 damage in a solo game. So, just gotta weather the attacks here. Gonna put one on Hirluin, that's gonna deal 2 damage, and probably put the other one on Forlong. Exhaust a character you control, no problem. So, we'll be easily able to take out the Haradrim Archer, not Southern Archer. Haradrim Archer, and deal 3 damage to the Oliphant. You can only deal 3 damage per round to the Oliphant. So, I'll go ahead and grab a card from the Crossroads deck at the beginning of the quest phase. Haradrim Archer, I'm not sure what the last card is. It may be, I think it's another archer of some kind. I do know all the contents of the Crossroad deck, but I can't remember exactly what's come off the deck so far. So I'll quest for enough to make the 5 progress I need, and we get a, when revealed, place this card under the Black Gate or grab a card from the Crossroads deck and put it into play engaged with me. Then I also get, I must return an enemy engaged with me to the staging area, which I can't do, or search the encounter deck for a Harad enemy. So there's one more of those guys. He's in the bottom right of the deck there. That is the card that returns an enemy to the staging area. So there's 8 cards left in the deck. I've got 4 attacks coming. And if that card comes, I will lose. If that card comes as one of the shadow cards, I will lose. And if it doesn't, then I think I'll win. This comes down to going back to what I said earlier about regretting putting the Oliphant under the Black Gate. So now I have no leeway now, and a 50-50 chance to lose. So 4 attacks here. We went ahead and moved to the Crossroads, and just hope for the best. We'll put the Oliphant attack on a Hunter of Lamedon. If this attack destroys a character, it won't. Just 2 damage. Got Haradrim Archer on Hunter of Lamedon. No problem there. The Warrior of Lossarnach, no, on Hirluin, and no problem there. Last one. And no problem there if this attack destroys a character, and it won't. So now I can deal damage in return, though I don't really need to. And we'll put some more on the Oliphant, just in case the game goes another round. So just quest for enough to make 9 progress on the Crossroads, and then that will end the quest. Southron Rearguard. That's the card I didn't want. It was 1 card away from hitting me with its shadow effect. So that will end the game. I don't know that I played it perfectly. Well, I don't think I played it perfectly. I think I could have engaged that Oliphant earlier. But this is a quest where definitely even one small decision in the wrong way can result in losing the game. It's a very, very difficult quest. My pick for either top 1 or top 2 in difficulty among all the Nightmare quests. Very, very difficult. So, thank you for watching.